get started.
All right. Hello, everyone. I see people joining in here. We'll get started here in just a moment, but I want to say hi, my name is Rhiannon Williams. I'm a product owner here with TLC, and my focus is on cataloging and item maintenance and all things surrounding items. So I want to talk a little bit today about batch editing, both titles and items today within LS2 Cataloging. So I am going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm also joined here by Kim Mumbauer, who is our product manager of cataloging on the Publix team as well, and she'll be monitoring chat and the Q&A for any comments or questions you may have. So please feel free to leave those in the chat or the Q&A, and we will be getting to those.
Rhiannon, could you make your screen a little larger? The fonts, or
Oh, yeah.
uh, what go up to a little higher percentage. It's a
Yes.
little small. So there we go. That's great.
Is that better? All right.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Cool. All right. So I have a number of batch edits that I want to cover today. So this may be a fairly brief look at each individual type of batch edit for batch editing titles as well as batch editing items within LS2 cataloging. But I'm going to talk through each of them and then also demonstrate a couple of the most commonly used ones or ones that are maybe a little bit unique or have very specific functions. So I'm starting out here in my LS2 cataloging title space. So I'm going to start up here with my title spaces, and I have a number of titles here in this title space for the American Horticultural Society Book Award. And I'm going to go ahead and I want to add an award title to all of these titles in this space. So in order to access some of the batch edit features within a title space or an item space, you have to select multiple or even just one title. So I can select a number of them here. I can select all of them by selecting this little box up at the top, or I can clear my selection if I'm all done with it. And I'll show you later on when there's a large number of titles or items in a space, how you can select all of them at once. But I'm going to go ahead and select all of my titles in this space here. And the batch editing actions are all in this batch actions menu, which is this little ellipses button. And once I select here, I get a number of options where I can that I can complete on all of these titles together. So I can batch publish these. This says only 9 right now because one of these is actually already published. I can batch edit, which we will jump into here in a moment. I can also use the compare feature, which is blanked out because this is for only 4 titles at maximum to compare them. I can also export, research for them, remove from title space, or delete the titles completely. But I'm going to hop into this edit here. And this is a screen we're going to be seeing a lot of today when doing all of these batch editing. So from this little pop-up here, we can see how many titles that are actually selected to edit. And then we also get all of these drop downs for different features of a title record that we can edit and batch. So I'm going to go select awards. And awards is one of the ones where we can add an award to a title. Currently, we don't have the batch option to remove or replace an award in titles, but we can add them. And for all of the batch edits here, we get this little information box highlighted in blue down here that will let you know exactly where the award or the batch edit is being added to. So for example, this one is added to the mark field 396 subfield A to all the records. And since all of these award terms are curated and added to a glossary maintained by TLC staff, we also add the source of TLC content to the end of them. So this award drop down here searches for um, the awards from the glossary, that the same one that shows up in the title editor if you're adding them. And I have gone ahead and added this Horticultural Society Book Award here. So I can select that, and we also get a couple of options for each of our batch edits in terms of what to do once the edit is completed. So we have the option to have it save as a draft. And if this is selected and nothing else is chosen, it's going to save it as a draft to the exact same title space it's in right now. Or you can also choose to move those titles to a different title space. Say if you're working in batches, or um, you have a group of things you're adding or you're changing all at once and you're wanting to do them in batches, you can just move them to another space if you want to do a different action on them later. So I'm going to leave them in the same title space. And you can also move titles with errors to a different title space. It's pretty uncommon to come across a batch editing error. Um, the one I can think of in the future is with record locking, but in version 5.7.5, which is now available, it'd be very unlikely you come across an error with batch editing, but you can have set up an error title space under your user just as a catch-all for some of those errors. But I'm going to, and then the other option here is to publish the titles. And so that these can be all published, and then this updated information is sent to the pack. And then you can also move them, move the titles with errors to a different title space. So I'm going to go ahead and save these as a draft and add those. And I only had 10 titles, so this process works fairly quickly. And so now I've seen that all of these were updated. And if I click into one of these titles, and I come down here to our award section, I can see now our award that we batch edited is on here. So that's one of the most simple batch edit options that we have for titles, where you can just simply add something and then you can choose to save as a draft or publish it. But if we want to have this title space, I have a couple of different examples set up in here. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these titles again to show the next batch edit for titles. And this one, this next section is under characteristics. So these are all things that appear in the characteristics section of the title editor. And we have two actions that we can take. We can add or replace, and there's a couple of different options within here. But just when we're adding, we have the option to add an audience rating term. So this is for, this would add a rating term that's pulled from our curated glossary of terms that's added to the mark field 385 subfield A. And they include, the rating terms for television, movies, video games, and some manga titles. So you can batch add those to titles from here. You can select them from the glossary. Or we can also add a form term here that added to the 380. And these are all of the different Mark GT terms, as well as some form terms that we have curated in the TLC GT source. And then finally, we also have a batch edit to add projection formats. And these are all of the RDA projection formats here in this glossary as well. Actually, come in here to my board games titles. So I have 4 titles here that are board games. They are all objects, but I noticed that I didn't add the RDA characteristics term for the form. So I want to add the form term of board games. So I chose to add a characteristics term. I want to add a form term, and then I can select from here board games. And this is one of the ones that we have added to the glossary. And I'm actually going to go ahead and publish these titles because I know that this is the last thing I wanted to do and they're ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and publish. And they were edited and successfully published. And I can see those that they were all edited here. So That's a quick look at the adding the characteristics, but we also have the option to replace audience terms. So I'm going to go ahead and come into this title space now. I went ahead and I'd already selected all of these previously, and that selection stays for my user. So I'm going to come up here to my batch edits. I'm going to go back into characteristics, and again, I want to choose this time to replace. And so there's only one option for replace, and that will replace the target audience code in the 008 byte 22 for formats that have a target audience. For those specific material formats that don't have a target audience code in that byte, they're not going to be changed. So I can choose to replace these. And I have 10 titles here that were miscatalogued as juvenile, and I want to change them to adult. So I can go ahead and choose to change those. It take a little bit for it to complete this batch edit. And while this is loading, that was not too bad. And now I can see that this audience term here, which is one of our filters, has now been updated, and all of these titles are now listed as adult, which is exactly what I wanted. So we also have the options to add genres to titles. I have this title space here for romantasy titles. And if you all are subscribed to the LS Community Catalogers Corner blog post to get those in your email or get notified when we post them, you might have seen recently that Kim posted a blog post talking about how we have added the genre term romantasy to our glossary of terms for those specific books where the romance and fantasy are deeply intertwined together. And this is a term that's really popular. People are searching for it, and people are maybe coming over from Book Talk or from Bookstagram and wanting to search for specific romantasy titles. So now we have the option to add those here. So we can select all of these titles in here. And so I actually have 13 titles in my title space, but only 10 of them are selected because that's what I have showing down here. I can either come down here and choose to show all of them. So I'll show 100, and I have 3 that are not selected, or I can go ahead and click that and select all of them. If I had only a handful of them selected and I want all of them to be selected, and I had some on a second page, I can click here to select all 13 titles. So that's just a quick little tip. Then I'm going to come in here to edit these, and I want to add a genre term. So I'm going to go ahead and search for romantasy, which is our new term added to our TLC genre term glossary. And I will keep them saved as a draft. And I want to add that term in here. And some of these batch edits, depending on the nature of the edit, or especially the number of titles that you're using or that you're wanting to edit at once, some of these batch edits may take a little bit longer and may become a background task. And we'll get a pop-up for that, and I'll show that here shortly when we edit a large number of titles. But now all of these titles now have that new genre term added to it. Let's see. Yep. And now that genre term is here. And for any of these batch edits where you are adding a genre term or one of the terms pulled from one of our glossaries, there is a check to make sure that that's not being duplicated in the title, so you're not having duplication or anything that's going to clutter up your records. So rest easy that you're not going to have a whole bunch of random extra duplicates within there. So the next batch edit that we can do is to add notes. I'm going to go ahead and just show it with a couple of these. I'm just going to show you the menu. So we can choose to add two different types of notes. We can add a contents note, which adds the basic level contents note to the 505 field. And if there is an existing contents note in the 505 or for the other note here, the general note in the 500, this does not replace any of the notes in them. It's simply going to just add another field since these are all repeatable. And then these fields here are just free text fields. So you can add whatever note you want to these and again, save them as draft or publish them. I'm going to go ahead and back out of here. You may notice if you're in this and choosing a whole bunch of different options, it can maybe get a little bit slow and clunky. So if you change your mind, I just like kind of back out of the batch edit pop up and bring it back up again. So the next option is to add a series, title to a group of titles you have selected here. And this search window here is the exact same one that appears in the title editor, where you could search through its marked series or your local verified and unverified series titles that you have added here. And this is a unique one because we also have the option where you can choose to delete other series data. So this can be great if you have pulled in a bunch of different titles, say from its mark or from other Z3950 sources, and they all have, different libraries, maybe spell their series differently, may include the word series in the series title, some don't. This can be an easy way to choose the series title exactly that you want for all of them and remove other series data from them. And so that is a look at the series batch edit. And then the next one I want to demonstrate is about subjects, where there are a number of unique actions within here. So we have the three actions that are possible with batch editing. We have all three of them, which is to add, remove, and to replace. So the option to add a subject here, currently it is only to add a subdivision to a particular topical subject. This is adding the subdivision to a topical subject heading that must already exist in these titles. If this topical subject heading does not exist, subdivision and that topical subject are not added. And if the subdivision already exists, it's not duplicated within it. It is on our roadmap in the hopefully near future to get added where we can add just a topical subject to a title, which I know would be very helpful. But for now, if you have, say, I'm trying to think of a subject. So if we wanted to add in friendship here, and then I can choose to add in fiction here. So this edit would require for all of these titles to have the topical subject of friendship already added to them, and then this would just add the fiction subdivision to them. So that one's a little bit tricky, and there's some unique quirks to it, but can be very helpful if you have standard subdivisions you'd like to add to them, like fiction, for example. Another subjects batch edit that we have is to remove, and there are a couple of unique ones in here. And it gives us options to very quickly remove groups of different subjects from these title records. You have the option to remove bisect headings or fast headings, mesh headings, Sears headings, and then all non-LC headings, which excludes the genres. So if your library in particular does not use bisect headings, or you don't like fast or mesh or Sears, you can go through and remove all of those. And then you can also, for this one, we'll remove all non-Library of Congress headings, excluding the genres, which are from the genre glossary. And it will remove all of these. But something to note is if you do have local subjects. That is also included in here. So that's something to keep in mind if you're working with this and you have local subjects that you've added. Those are removed with this particular batch edit. So something to keep in mind. I don't want you to do this and then accidentally lose all of your local subjects you've added. So something to note. If you don't want that, but you want to remove all of these, you can quickly go through, complete remove the bisects, then remove the fast, then remove the mesh, that sort of thing. So it could work in steps rather than removing them all at once. And then we also have the option to remove a subdivision from the topical subject. This is kind of the foil to the add, where if you have a specific subject like friendship, and we added fiction to all of them, and I think, oh no, I didn't mean to do that. I don't want to add fiction to all of these titles, then I can come back in here and remove the subdivision of fiction from all of the friendship subjects. And then finally, we also have the uh, the one I'm going to demonstrate today, which is to remove all adult subjects from a juvenile record. So this edit removes those adult subject headings, so any of the LCSH headings from the record that are defined as juvenile, so those that have the byte 22 code J for in the 008. And so this removes all of those adult subject headings. So that's just going to clean them out if you only want the children's one or the LCSHAC headings. So we have the option to remove all of those. But we also have first is to replace. And in replacing here, we have a similar edit option to replace the adult subjects with a juvenile subject heading. So this one is a little bit tricky. It's a little bit finicky because it replaces the adult subject headings with the juvenile ones if there's a correlation, because oftentimes if you're searching in the ITSMARC authorities and you may come up with two different terms, one of them won't have anything in parentheses, meaning that one is the Library of Congress subject heading, and then one of them may have LCSHAC, meaning that it's the children's subject heading. So a lot of them, they're going to be in both glossaries of, the source of terms. So this is going to go ahead and replace the adult ones with the juvenile one if there are no juvenile subjects in the record already. It's not going to touch those that have juvenile and adult subject headings in there because there may be instances where there's a subject heading that just does not exist in the children's subjects. So we understand that you may want to retain those adult ones because they just don't exist as a children's one. So we didn't want to, remove any of those subjects that you may have added intentionally. But oftentimes, if you may get pulling in records from other sources where they're just using the adult subjects, then you can go ahead and use this batch edit to change all of those. So I'm going to go ahead and do this option to replace the adult subjects with juvenile if there are no juvenile subjects present in the title. And I've realized here that I have 10 selected, but I actually want to do this batch edit on all of my titles. So now I've selected all of them. And we'll go back in here. And I want to replace them. And I'm going to go ahead and save as a draft here. And this is a pretty big group of titles. So this may end up going as a batch action, but no. Okay, these were all edited successfully. That's great. And now if I come into one of these titles, I know I had, okay, yeah, I had adult subjects, or the source was the LCSH here before. Now they've been changed. But in case that there are other titles in here that have adult ones that weren't changed, or you just want to just strip them out completely, you do have the option to just completely remove the adult subjects from these titles with this action. So you can have them changed over if they can, and if they couldn't be, then you're just going to remove them if that's a workflow that works for your library. And for replacing, we also have the option to replace the subdivision on the topical subject. Again, this works like the ones I've said before, where you have to have the particular topical subject there to start with, and then you can choose a particular subdivision and then replace it. And these are exact. So if this topical subject exists with a different subdivision, it's not going to change that subdivision. And then we also have the option to just completely replace a topical subject. So say that you have updated uh, your your cataloging guidebook or your terms around how you're cataloging. You decide, I don't want to use, we don't want to use this particular subject anymore. We want to change it to something else. So that is an option here to search for a particular topical subject and then change it to another one. So that is a pretty brief look at the options for batch editing titles within a title space, but there are many more batch editing options for items. But before I jump over to editing items, I want to see if there are any questions. Kim, have any questions come up in the chat?
Yes, several of them. Let me go back and make sure. I thought you might want to show the screen again, or you have already
Hmm.
since then. Someone was asking, where do you tell it to publish? Publish in
Ah, yeah,
instead of sending as draft, and I just thought it might help to show the screen again.
yeah, for sure. I'll
So
go ahead
yeah,
and select to add I'll go
kind of a
through the whole thing. And
yeah.
down here, you would just click on this publish button down here, and then um, the confirm button down here changes to your green publish button that you're used to seeing in the editor. So if you want to publish your titles, then you click there.
And Melissa was also saying, do we really need to publish? And I said, yes. Do you want to expand on that? Why you need to
Yeah,
publish?
yes. So when you are editing these titles, if you are just using them to save as draft here, and they're going to come back into this space, that means that they're just saved as a draft, and drafts are only visible within LS2 cataloging. So, the draft is updated and it's exactly how you want it within cataloging, but publishing a title is then what's going to push it out to be updated for the pack so that, say you're adding a new subject term or, a subject subdivision to a term, that all those edits you have done to these are not going to be visible until they are selected to be published. And another option to publish them from a title space. So you've done your batch edits to these titles. You didn't choose to publish them right from the batch edit pop-up, but you have them all as drafts here. And I can see that these are drafts because there's a little edit button here or a little edit pencil icon here. I can come up here to just publish them in batch or publish them all together. And the maximum selected to publish all at one time is 100. So this may take a little while for them to all get through. Um, but publishing is really important to make sure that the the changes that you have made in these batch edits or any other edits you're doing are then sent out to the pack so that your patrons or customers can see them.
Let's see. Another question had to do with is the title is the note title batch edit for
Hmm.
notes. Is that limited to just contents and general notes? And I said yes, but I'm asking everyone to say what other note fields do you want to see included? So
Yes.
uh, that's it so far. Let me check the screen again to see if there is. Oh, here's another one since we're on the same title batch edit. When batch replacing a subject heading with a different one, can we use locally approved subject headings as the replacement? She says she
Yes.
missed seeing it if it was visible in the response.
Yes. Let me choose another title space. Um, this particular instance of LS2 cataloging that I'm using is a little bit has been a little bit touchy this morning. I was talking with Kim about it before we launched the webinar. So I may not be able to show exactly how it will show up for you, but I will show the batch edit for the adding a subject heading.
Subject.
Yeah. So if I want to replace, we want to do, okay. Yeah. So if I want to find say I want to choose a local subject, I'm trying to think of one that in particular that I have, or if I want to change the friendship um, topical subject to a different, uh, if I want to change all of my, say, adult friendship uh, subjects to the children's one here. So I was able to select two different LC authorities here, but I could also choose to select a local authority if it's one that's available, if I have one created already. From this little menu, it does not allow you, I don't believe, to create a local authority here. It would have to be one that's already created either in the title editor or in the authorities tab. Um, so you may have to like pop out to the authorities, create a new local authority and then pop back in here to select that. But you can choose your local authority as one to replace and then select the LC heading here to replace it with. Or the other option is to, in the authorities tab, find a better heading and then choose the LC one. And Kim has covered that in a couple of our past webinars.
That's great. Anne says thank you. It's oh gosh, the responses are scrolling through here. She said she was busy taking notes and missed seeing the screen, so she said thank you. Got it.
Gotcha. No worries. And this webinar is being recorded and it will be available on Catalogers Corner, and we will be sending out an email after the webinar with a link to the recording. So, all right. I think now we can jump into some of the edits on items. So here are all my item spaces, and I often doing this, I create the name of my item space or my title space based on the thing I want to do. And this is what I was doing. Previously I was working as a cataloger and tech services person at a library using library.solution. So this is sort of the same workflows that I was doing previously when I was working in a library. But I'm going to go through some of the batch editing options here. I'm just going to go ahead and select this one to start with. And I have a whole bunch of items here. And in an item space, you see a little bit of different information than you do in the title one, because you see your barcode, the title, and as well as some of the holdings information here in the grid. But the batch actions, again, it lives in this little ellipses button up here, and it's a little farther down now. Underneath your printing, as well as the print queue buttons here, we have the option to edit all of them. This looks very familiar to the batch editing titles. So we have a number of different options of batch edits for items. And the first one here is to add, remove, or replace a copy number. So all of these work very similarly. The copy number, the price, volume, and year, which I'll touch on here shortly, all of them have the option to add, remove, or replace that specific item information. And it's going to add this term to the item record, and it appends the text if there's already information in the copy field already. So if I say, all of these are, copy one, and I know that I'm going to get another batch in for another box of books in for, the second copy of these books, something like that, then I can batch edit and add copy two to all of those. For the remove, we have the option to remove all, and which will remove all of the content from the copy number field on the item, as well as the option to remove an exact match. So if I had a whole bunch where I had, I want to remove all copy one from all of these items, then it can remove it. And this is looking for an exact match. So any other copies or any other items that have copy number information in them that is not exactly one and only one, So if you have, copy 10, that's not going to match on copy 1, then it's going to just ignore those and only remove copy number 1 information from those items. And similarly, the replace function works the same, where it's going to either replace all copy number information or replace only an exact match of, I want to find all of those that have 1 in them and replace them actually with 2. So the copy number, the price, works very similarly. There is not a remove price option currently, but you can replace all or replace an exact match. The volume information works exactly the same, where you can add volume information, remove all, or remove an exact match of a volume, or replace all or replace an exact match of a volume, and as well as the year. So all of those batch item edits work the same way. So, and this is the year information added to the item itself. This is not changing the year that is in the title record associated with the item. And with all of these item batch edits, you do have the option to move the items to a different item space. So you can move them, if you are done with these and you want to move them to another spot, but you don't want them to just be removed from the item space, you can move them to there, or move items with errors to an error space. And I have an error item space here that I've set up to put those in. So some of the other options we have that can be a little more interesting. We have the option to add information to the custom fields. So these are the fields that are set up. These are your user-defined fields that are set up during your implementation. And those and the particular subfields in the item field in the MARC record, those are all tailored to fit your needs. For this example database, I have them set up as a funding, a source, a staff note, and then I've got a test subfield here as well. But for all of these, say I keep source information on these items, and these were all actually donated. So in my cataloging policies, we add the source of donation to our donated items, so that stays there. You can also do like donated by and a name or a foundation or whomever was donating it. And so I want to add this to all of them. So we just go ahead and click save. And since these are on items, you don't have to publish, you don't have to save as draft or anything. Once you save them, it is the updated information is getting sent out to both staff and to the pack. And so now when I click into one of these items, I can see here that we have down here in our user-defined fields here, see that the source of donation has been entered here. And if I wanted to add another source here, I can do the same batch action, and it's just going to add it onto the end of this same, essentially kind of a note field here that's set up. All right. So the next option I want to show is where we can batch edit the holdings code. So I want to change all of these items. So as an example, as a scenario, in my previous library, we would have, all of our new books set up, and they would be in a display up at the front. All of the new books, they had a different circulating policy, limit, like shortened checkout time, all of that. And all of these books were there, and now these books were all brand new in January, but in our policy, after a couple of months, we want to move them to their actual owning location rather than the active holdings code. So I can go in here and select to edit all of these, and I can choose to edit the holdings code. And we have the option to change or if say we were just moving them to a different display, or I could change them to actually just go to their holdings code or to the owning holdings code or to a new active one. Say if I had a collection of books, I want to just move them to a display, I could choose an active holdings code and choose for my location. Say I want to move them to the Taylor location, and I want to move all of these to a particular display collection here. Or we also have the option to return to the owning location or collection. So when I cataloged and added all of these items, I had the owning location as where they eventually will live. These are all fiction titles, adult fiction. They're all going to go back there. So I want to return all of those to that owning location and collection. So I can go ahead and hit save, and then all of these items are going to be updated. And now there's no longer this little checkbox selected where there's different circulating information. Now they are all going to be in the system, at least at their owning location, and then I can just go ahead and pull those books off the shelf and move them. Or if I already pulled them off the shelf, scan them into the item space, do this batch edit, and then reshelve them. So that is one example of changing the holdings code with a batch edit. Another option is to add notes to items. I don't think I had I do. I have a number of items here that were all marked as damaged. So I want to come in here and I want to add a note to these items. And so we have the option again to add, to remove, or replace. I'm going to talk about add first. So we have the option to add a check-in, check-out note that is going to show up in LS2 staff when they're being checked in or checked out. We have a condition note, which is what I'm going to use here. We also have a non-public and a public note that can be added to items in batch. So for instance, I had a whole bunch of these damaged items come back to tech services. I finished my repairs on them, and these books are all dry, ready to go back out. And for a cataloging policy, we add a condition note where I'm going to say that these were repaired. You see that I already had this written out in my preparations for this. So I add in the saying that it was repaired. I add the date. I add my initials, and just like a little fun tip, I like to add like a space, semicolon, space to the end of my sort of notes, because this adding any of these item information for any of the notes or the user-defined fields and things like that, it's just adding it into that text field essentially, and it's going to append it to the end. So if maintaining a space, semicolon, space can kind of like keep things clean so you don't have like text running into each other. Just something that I've noticed using LS2 cataloging. So, all of these books are now repaired. I'm going to add my condition note to them, and then I can go ahead and take these books back up to the front, check them back in, and they can be shelved once again to be circulating. Another note on the note batch edits. I'll talk about the other options for notes. So that was adding a condition note and all of those different types. We also have the option to remove any of these. And these are an exact match once again. So keeping consistency with what notes that you're adding to items can be really helpful, especially these ones like a condition note or any of these. So can be very helpful to have like consistency, so that because they're looking for an exact match. And then also we have the replace function where we can replace them. Oh, see, this is like kind of not updated yet, so I'm going to go ahead and back out and open up and add a note. There we go. Or I can go ahead and say that I want to replace my condition notes, where I'm going to find, the note I just put in there. I'm like, oh no, I added the wrong date. So I can find that and then replace it with the correct one here and save them. All right. So the next thing I want to touch on are our shelf location batch editing. I might come back into my spaces and I'm going to choose these titles. So, for instance, at my library, we have a very uh, devoted base of people who really love cozy mysteries. So we actually pulled all of our cozy mysteries out of our main fiction circulating collection, and we want to shelve them all together. So I've already changed them where our owning location now is now in this cozy collection because I want them all to be together. And the shelf location, I want to add a prefix to it where it's just going to say cozy and retain the rest of the shelf location information that was already there. And then I can go ahead and print new spine labels, add those on there here shortly. But first, I need to update my shelf location. So I selected all of my items here, and I'm going to batch edit my shelf location, and I can choose to add. And for this one, we get the option to add a prefix or a suffix to all existing shelf locations that are selected. So if I want to add this prefix, I want to add cozy to the start of all of my shelf locations. And again, we can move them to a different item space or move those with errors to a different space. You say, just to be safe, I'm going to add them to my error space here. And I'll go ahead and save. And if I click into one of my items here, I can see with my shelf location now, it says cozy, and then the same shelf location information I had before from the main circulating fiction collection is now still retained, and now we just have a new prefix added. And then I can also, say we wanted to change all those with a new shelf location and print new barcodes or print new spine labels rather. And then I could just go ahead and do that from right here, add them to the label print queue or print them right here and update all of those titles right there. So that's a very handy thing. Also with the shelf locations, we have the option to, again, remove them. And it's going to remove specific text from that shelf location. It's looking for an exact match. So if I say, actually, we've decided we don't want to do that, I want to remove cozy from all of those, or say you have a cozy collection, you're going to move them into your regular circulating, your regular adult fiction collection, you can just choose to remove that. And then we also have the option to replace. And again, this is finding an exact match for specific text, and you can replace it with something else. Very helpful batch action if you are, genreifying your library or moving collections around, any of that. So I'm gonna pop back into my item spaces again, and I want to see if there's anything else I want to change. I think that was the main item editing and title editing that I wanted to cover today. So we have about 10 minutes left here in our webinar, so I'm happy to answer any questions or yeah. Any questions, Kim?
Yes, there is one that I thought you might want to expand
Cool.
on. Is there a recommendation when to use a title space and when to use an item space? Do some tasks require using one or the other?
Sure. So our the two different spaces are holding the two different, it's going to hold your bibliographic titles all together within the title space, and then your item spaces are only holding those, think of it as your physical items, all together. I like to think of these, item spaces as sort of like a digital book cart. You have all of these books here together. So for instance, for this, all of these books, these could be, titles I've pulled right off of the shelf onto my cart, come back to my workstation, and you can scan them directly here into your item space. And so an item space can only hold items that exist in your system that have a barcode associated with them. So you can go ahead and scan in barcodes directly into an item space, and they're all going to live here together. Whereas in a title space, this is where you are, let me find one that actually has titles in it. Here we go. This is where you are pulling in your bibliographic titles, and some of them may be titles that you already have where the source is local. These are titles that you've saved to your database. They may have items associated, they might not. Or this is also where you are searching and adding new bibliographic titles to your database and to your collection. And then you add your actual physical items from you can batch edit or collect together physical items within an item space. I hope that made sense.
Let's see if there's anything else here. Okay, here's another question. If we are using the remove function for batch editing call numbers, so we need to add a space after cozy, for example, so that the call number doesn't end up starting with a blank character. I think. And if you want to talk this through, I'm not sure I quite get that. So I'm trying to interpret what she's meaning here.
Okay. When you are adding the batch edit to edit the shelf location or the call number, when you are using that, if you want to add, when you're adding either a prefix or a suffix, it's going to automatically add that space after the word. So I added cozy to all of these as a prefix. I don't have a space added here. It's going to automatically add the space there, and it's added completely to your call number, your shelf location. That's now part of the whole string. It's not something that's stored separately. And the same with suffix. If I wanted to add cozy, I'll just go ahead and show this. If I add cozy as a suffix to all of these, and when I come into my item record, I can see here now I have my prefix, a space, the original shelf location, a new space, and then the cozy that I added afterwards. And this whole string is your shelf location. So if you are going to go print spine labels and you choose, add shelf location, it's going to add that whole text that's there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's right. I admit I add a space automatically but you don't have to.
Yeah.
It does it for you. Yeah. Anne asked a question again, and you've answered it, Rhiannon.
Okay.
Let's see. Here's another question. Is there a way to find all books that don't have images in the pack? Not quite related to batch edits, but it's a
No,
question.
but it's a good question, and I don't
Yeah.
believe that there is a way, unless you've come across something, Kim.
I can't think of if anyone on the call in the webinar might have done this. I think you have to somehow run a report to look at, but somehow you have to find titles that don't have a standard number or
Mm-hmm.
or the standard, but see what then that may not help either because some standard numbers don't have an image. So gosh, that's a tricky
Right.
one. I think you'd have
Yeah,
to
that
do a
one.
lot of searching.
Yeah, unfortunately, that may be something that is a bit tricky. And it may be something where you just keep a running list of, whenever you come across them, or whenever a patron says, "Hey, why don't I see a book jacket here?" Maybe something where you just have to keep a list of them. And that's an instance where, creating a title space may be really helpful if you want to just kind of group them all together, like make a title space for books missing book jackets. And so now anytime I find one of those titles that is missing something, I can just go ahead and, uh, add those in here, and then I can, try and do some sleuthing to find a standard number that's going to pull up a book jacket, or, add one in yourself in the 029 field or something like that. All right.
Yeah, Anne says in chat, she says, last time I asked, it was not possible to run that report for titles with missing cover art. I think it's an idea that Syndetics might have to help with. I'm not sure about that either. So we'll have to, I think your suggestion to kind of keep track of them in a title space is probably the simplest way.
Ah,
You
I
just,
see. Oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Um, the
Oh,
Anne followed up.
yeah.
She was saying thinking about in the case of removing part of the call number as opposed to adding. I think it would probably just be safest. I haven't tested whether or not it's removing that space or not, but just as good practice, I would add that space. So if you're removing a prefix, do your prefix of cozy, for example, and a space at the end to just remove it so that we don't have that blank character at the beginning. Um, I haven't. I don't know if you have tested this, Kim, whether it removes that space
It
character
does. I
in
had to add
between.
a
Oh, okay.
space. But if I remember right, I had to put a space in that prefix to remove it.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
it's been a
So,
while since I've tested, so you might try one and see. Try one, batch edit one title, just to
yeah.
see if it's working. I can test and put an update out somewhere for that. I'm pretty sure it does. I'm
Now I
pretty
want to
sure I
know.
had to add a space to after my prefix and before my suffix to get it removed. Uh, Let's see if there's anything else coming in. We'll have to. Okay. Yes. Mary's asking, is it possible to run a report for titles with fast headings? Um, Ruth Hayden at Smyrna was talking to me about this. She was looking for, I think she might have been looking for the same subject. Of course, the authority report, you could always export your authority report and then uh, sort it in Excel by the source column. That's after you've upgraded to 574. So if you have to be a 574 release or higher, you could just run your local authority report and then export it and then just sort it by the source column, and then you'll see all your fast headings with their titles, with the headings anyway. Then you'd have to look at all the titles. You'd have to run, I don't know if Ruth is here to answer, but if I remember right, yeah, if I'm remembering right. Ruth, did you have a separate, like a custom report? Wasn't Faith working on a custom report for you? In which case, I suggested she should make it public for everybody if she does that. Uh, Stand by. We'll get back to you. Yeah. It was a way. Faith is the reports writer, and she can work magic. So so I think that report might become available in a near future release where you can oh, okay, you didn't have a custom report. Oh well. There is that local authority report, and you just sort the data. Then you'll see the headings, and then you go into authorities tab and click on the heading, you'll see your titles. It's probably a better way. Yeah, I'll say answer live. That's the last question so far.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I went through that process of removing information from a shelf location. I removed cozy, and I did not include a space, and it did remove the preceding space here before the F and the space afterwards. So the system will do those checks to make sure that you don't have extra spaces at the beginning or end. But if you are hesitant, there's no harm in adding a space in the field to remove those when you're doing the batch edit. So there we go.
Anne
All
says,
right.
thank you for checking
Yeah, of
that
course.
out. Let's see. Another question's come in. Do we have time? Um,
Sure.
it's more authority related, but when replacing a subject heading that's no longer being used, could we just change the authority with find a better heading rather than batch editing?
Hmm, right. Yeah, I
Uh,
think that would be the fastest way to do that to get all of those titles updated, rather than trying to add them all to a title space. I don't believe that there is an option from the authorities lookup to grab all of those linked titles and add them to a title space currently. All right. Uh, don't know if there are any other questions. If not, I want to thank you all for spending your morning or afternoon with us here. And as Kim had put in the chat earlier, we have another cataloging webinar coming up on May 10th, and that's for correcting series or uniform title authority headings. Kim is going to be running that one. So there is a link in the chat to register for it. I'm going to go ahead and post that again. Here.
Everybody's thanking you, Rhiannon. They're thanking
Oh,
you for
great.
so you'll have to,
All
I
right.
could,
Well, thank you all so much. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that's all I have today. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you all next time.